Hi guys, welcome back again for another day of Devos, and hopefully some of you got to read the Didache yesterday, and you might have noticed a couple of things. Firstly, you might have noticed that it was separated into two sections, or there's very two clear sections within it. Firstly, there seems to be these moral implications of how to live, which you might have noticed has come from, a lot of it has come from the Sermon on the Mount. And the second section that sort of discusses on how the early church did things and how things should be done for the time and the context. But today we want to focus on this first section, which is these moral teachings, or what could be described as Jesus's yoke. Now, the early church, the early Christians, were known for people of practicing the way. They were people of the way. And that's because they followed these certain things that normal Jewish people wouldn't have done. They were completely distinct from the world around them. And they were distinct because of the way in which they lived. And they were known as the people of the way. So what is it, this way? Well, the way that I understand it is this is Jesus's teaching on the Sermon on the Mount. Now, you would have known that Jesus was a rabbi, but how he got there was he was a young boy. He would have learnt the Torah, he would have learnt the prophets, he would have known it all. And by the time that he gets himself to a status where he can be called a rabbi, a teacher, when he gets to that status, he's then able or given the authority to interpret the law and interpret scripture how he believes it, because of the wisdom that he's gained. And it is this that would have been known as the rabbi's yoke. Now I want to just draw our attention to Matthew 11 quickly, starting at verse 29, where Jesus says, "Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." Now, the yoke in this passage is often referred to as a farmer's yoke, and that was one that you might know or have heard this interpretation before, that just binds two big animals together, sometimes oxen, and they plough the field having this yoke around them. And the bigger one, the more experienced yoke, is the one, the more experienced oxen is the one that drives it, really. And on that, he's teaching the younger one, weaker one, what to do, and eventually they switch. And it's a great analogy for discipleship. But here, I don't think that's what Jesus is talking about. I think he's talking about this rabbi's yoke. He's teaching these lifelong lessons for a good life. And Jesus here is saying that my yoke is easy to bear and the burden I give you is light. And what I want to suggest to you today is this yoke, what Jesus was giving you, is the very thing that he's teaching on the Sermon on the Mount. Now, I haven't got time to go through the entire Sermon on the Mount with you today, but if you take in Jesus' message there of what he's bringing out, we see some of the extremities of what he's calling people to do, that people just have no chance of grasping by themselves, such as adultery, for instance. That in the Ten Commandments it says that do not commit adultery, but Jesus says, I tell you that when you even think about committing adultery, it's like you've already done it. He's taken something that you could physically probably do by yourself, and made it a matter of the heart, something which you cannot do by yourself. And in a sense, Jesus here, in making it harder for us to do as a teaching, makes it all the more us more reliant on him and the things that he has done. So what he's saying here is, for my yoke, my teaching is easy to bear and my burden is light. And he's basically saying this. He's saying that here are all the aspects in which you need to do to live a good life, but ultimately you're not going to be able to do them. You need to rely on me. I'm going to be the one that fulfills the law. I'm going to be the one that does all of this stuff, and you just have to trust and believe in me. It's all about abiding in the vine, and the fruit just comes out of that. So that's it for today, and tomorrow we're going to be looking at a little bit more on how Jesus fulfills the law.